You've stopped at thousands of red lights in your life, but the reason they're red has nothing to do with cars. It starts with a train crash, a fading paint problem, and a color your brain was already wired to fear. First, let's go back to where it all started. The railroads. Traffic lights didn't start with cars. They started with trains. In the 1830s, railroads were expanding fast across Europe and America. Engineers needed a universal signal system that worked day and night, in any weather. Red became the danger signal for one practical reason. Red dye was the most stable pigment available. It didn't fade under sunlight like other colors, so it stayed visible longer. Green was chosen as the opposite. On the light spectrum, green sits far from red, creating maximum contrast for train operators scanning signals from a distance. White was actually used for go at first, but that caused problems because white lights, like stars or distant lanterns, could be mistaken for signals, so green replaced white. It was distinct, visible, and couldn't be confused with anything else on the tracks. By the time cars arrived in the early 1900s, cities were chaotic. Pedestrians, horses, trolleys, and automobiles all fought for space. Engineers looked at what already worked. The railroad system. Why start from scratch when trains had been using red and green for decades? The first electric traffic signal was installed in Cleveland, Ohio in 1914. It had red and green lights, operated manually by a police officer in a booth. But cities needed more than just two lights. The jump from green to red was too sudden, and drivers didn't have time to react safely. That's when yellow entered the system. It gave drivers a warning, a buffer zone between go and stop. Yellow wasn't just helpful, it became essential. It reduced accidents and made the flow of traffic smoother and more predictable. Second, there's the science behind why these colors actually work. But why do red and green work so well? It's not just tradition, it's physics. Red light has the longest wavelength in the visible spectrum. That means it scatters less when it travels through air, fog, dust, or rain. Your eyes detect red from farther away than any other color. In low visibility, red cuts through when yellow or blue would blur. Green has a shorter wavelength, but it's still highly visible. It sits comfortably in the middle of what human eyes detect best. The key was contrast. Red and green are far apart on the spectrum, so even people with red-green color blindness can often distinguish them by position and brightness. Yellow fit perfectly in between. Its medium wavelength made it visible enough to grab attention, but not as urgent as red. It also stands out in daylight better than almost any other color. That's why construction signs, school buses, and caution tape all use yellow. The three-color system wasn't just smart. It was scientifically optimal. Each color had a role, and each one was backed by how light and human vision actually work. Third, psychology sealed the deal. Here's where biology and culture aligned perfectly. Humans have associated red with danger for thousands of years. Blood, fire, poisonous animals. Red signals threat across almost every culture. Green, on the other hand, meant life, plants, growth, safety. It's hardwired into how we read our environment. Traffic engineers didn't have to teach people what red and green meant. The colors already carried meaning. Yellow had its own psychological weight. It triggers caution without panic, a middle ground that feels instinctive. By the 1920s and 30s, countries around the world started standardizing traffic signals. They needed a system that worked everywhere, regardless of language. Red, yellow, green became the global standard by the 1930s. No words required, no translation needed. It worked in New York, Tokyo, Paris, and Mumbai. Same colors, same meaning, same instant recognition. Even today, with all our technology, we haven't replaced it, because it still works. The system is so embedded in our daily lives that we don't even think about it. But every time you stop at a red light, you're using a design that's over a century old. So red, yellow, and green weren't chosen randomly. They came from railroads, relied on the physics of light, and tapped into instincts we already had. A system designed over a century ago still controls every intersection on the planet. Even traffic lights have a story. Small facts, big stories.